Hi guys, and welcome to this video on the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which happens on the 21st of December 2020. Thank you for joining me. I'm also going to talk about the Age of Aquarius because I did a personal reading for someone a few days ago and they asked me whether this was the beginning of the Age of Aquarius. So I'm going to go into a bit of detail about that and explain my thoughts on it. The first thing to be aware of here is that this happens during the winter solstice on the 21st of December. The Earth has two poles, so it has the North Pole and the South Pole, but the Earth doesn't just float around in our solar systems at a perfectly 90-degree angle. It's somewhat tilted, and during the winter solstice, the Earth is the furthest away from the Sun, and that's why this is the darkest day of the year, or the shortest day of the year, where we have the least sunlight available and we have a lot of darkness. And remember that this is based on the northern hemisphere. All astrology is based on the northern hemisphere. So if you're in the southern hemisphere and it's the longest day of the year, the meaning is still the same. It's about taking this opportunity to look at the dark parts of your life, the things that at other times may seem scary or difficult or that you don't necessarily want to look at, and to just kind of ease into that and to relax and to take a moment and to say, what am I going to focus on in the next few months? This energy lasts until March 2021, so it's going to be with us for a while. And before you rush off into taking some new action, it's really a time to get comfortable with where you are, what your plans are for the future, and what it is that brings you a sense of fun and joy and enthusiasm. It actually reminds me of the solar eclipse that we've got happening on the 14th of December. What happens there is that the moon moves in front of the sun and blacks out the sun completely. And in astrology, the moon represents the inner world. It's what you're feeling, it's your intuition, it's those things that are kept in the dark, you know, what you're feeling at 3 in the morning. The sun is what empowers us, it's what gives us life and warmth, and it's kind of the face we show to the world. It's what we do on a conscious level. So with the moon blocking that out, the focus is really on the inner world and giving more importance to the individual and what's happening for you specifically, rather than being focused on authority figures or the rules or people in charge, you know, the powers that be. So the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, two outer planets, Jupiter being the biggest planet in our solar system, they actually sit at the exact same degree, so they're both at 0 degrees in Aquarius from the 20th of December through until the 24th of December. So you'll be able to see this up in the sky. It's going to be amazing. They're huge outer planets and they're going to look like they're one big planet, and that's going to create this huge star up in the night sky. Now that in itself can be so inspiring. It kind of gives you a sense of hope. It's almost like there's this bigger power that's intervening in our life, and that's lighting up the night sky and giving you something to focus on. It's like a rainbow. It's something that just happens that's totally out of your control, and you look up at this sky, which is amazing and wonderful, but we don't often see it that way because we're so used to it. And you're going to have a look and see this, and it's like, wow, something is going on, things are changing, there's a big light that's now appearing, and that in itself can be really restorative and give you a sense that there is a future, that there is hope. It's known as the Christmas star because it's going to be so big and bright, and obviously the last time we had this in history was 2,000 years ago when Jesus was born. We also had this giant star up in the sky. The 3 wise men looked at that and they went to find Jesus, but back then it wasn't actually Saturn and Jupiter. They're both outer planets. 2,000 years ago, we had Venus, the personal planet of love and beauty, conjoining Jupiter, the outer planet, and they sat so closely together that they created this big star. Now we've got 2 outer planets, so this is going to be even bigger. It's going to be brighter. So 3 wise men, wherever you are, I hope you have a great journey. But for the rest of us, it really gives us something to work towards. It's like, I may not be setting any goals in my life, or I may have found that my path has got a little bit difficult to walk. I may have lost sight of things. It just appears and it says, it doesn't matter if you've got off track. It doesn't matter if things have gone awry. You can try again. We've got a whole new year ahead of us. and it's time to get back to basics and to say, what is it that I want to do with my life? How can I take charge of my circumstances, and how can I be hopeful and positive about what's coming up? So the two of them are conjunct in Aquarius from the 20th of December at 0 degrees, but they are still conjunct in astrology. There's something called orbs. Okay, so when two planets are at different degrees, you count them as a conjunction, as being joined up, or I count 10-degree orbs. So if one thing is at 15 degrees and the other is at 25 degrees, I still see that as a conjunction because they're within 10 degrees of one another. And they're going to be super conjunct until the 1st of January, where there's only 1 degree between the two planets. And then they're still conjunct until March. The gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's more than 10 degrees between the two planets after March. And that's when I would say that they're no longer conjoined and that the energies aren't molded and melded together the way they have been here during this 4-day period, but particularly during the 21st of December, when it's going to be most striking. So mostly in Vedic astrology, which is the Indian version of Western astrology, the two planets are known as the great benefic and the great malefic. So Jupiter is the great benefic. It's the lucky planet. It's all about growth and good fortune and good luck. And Saturn is, I often call it like the head teacher of the chart, because it's all about taking stock of where you are, looking at the existing structures of your life and asking yourself, do you know what, am I on the right path? Am I following the things that I set out to do? And it can be really challenging. So if you're looking at your own birth chart, a lot of people look at Saturn return, which happens usually 3 times in life, between the ages of 28 and 29 and a half, 56 and 58, and then again between the ages of 84 and 86. When Saturn returns, things can get a little bit difficult because Saturn kind of comes along and he says, hello, how are you doing with your life? This is what you're supposed to be doing. This is what you feel internally to be true and right. And let's have a look at what you're actually doing. And if you're off track, Saturn kind of helps you by making life more difficult, and it's kind of like the tower in the tower sometimes. And it removes these structures which you may have got stuck in, and it forces you to think again and to reevaluate and to change, even at times if you don't want to. So it's kind of an energy that comes in despite yourself. Jupiter returns every year. So Jupiter moves more quickly, and Jupiter changes signs once a year and it returns once a year. So that obviously happens a lot. And Jupiter, when it comes around, really gives you a moment of, hey, this is easy, this is positive, this is where I can see growth, and it just gives you that natural enthusiasm. So when the two come together every 20 years, like they do here, there's a major clash. It's like growth and expansion. It's kind of like being in a car and hitting the gas pedal and the brakes at the same time. Either the car brakes or it stutters or something happens. And I always talk about this because I think it's quite interesting. It happened last time this happened was 2001, and we had 9/11, which certainly changed the structure of how we move around on planet Earth and the way we feel safe and things like that. Before that, we had it in 1981, and we had the birth of HIV/AIDS. For a lot of people, that changed the way we interact, the way we look at personal relationships and personal responsibility and all of that. And we had to make changes to our society and the structures of humanity. Obviously, people are getting ill, and as a result, we're going to have to make changes to prevent the illness kind of getting out of hand and spreading. Now, 2020, we obviously had a lot going on, and 2021, I really think, because it's going into Aquarius, an air sign, the sign of the humanitarian, the sign of the thinker, the sign of the futurist, the innovator, the activist, the scientist, the person who's concerned with technology that's used in a way to make life easier for everybody on this planet. I think that it's going to be a lot about hindsight and looking at how the structures of 2020 changed our society, what we're going to learn from that, and what things we can implement in future to retain good changes and to minimize the negative changes. I mean, you don't need to be a genius or a psychic to look at what's already changing. For instance, major tourist attractions in areas of natural beauty, a lot of those have recovered a lot in 2020 just because 1 million tourists weren't traipsing through. So we'll be able to learn from that and see that if we do conserve certain things, that planet Earth can heal itself and can recover. And we also have things happening socially this year, which I'll get to into a minute, but it's about learning from those things and looking at the world as a greater whole. I mean, 50 years ago even, or 100 years ago, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, and we weren't as connected as we are now. If someone has an idea somewhere, they go on Twitter, they post it, and millions of people are able to see that and find out about it. So with this great conjunction happening in Aquarius, I really think it's about how we can all pull together as this kind of brotherhood of man, which is quite a funny term considering the history of humanity, and how we can pull together to achieve something or several things as a planet. And that really is something new. All countries in the world working together, everyone kind of focused on the same goals to make things better. So just going back to some of the facts and numbers about this, the closest these two were to each other was 400 years ago in 1623. So this is something that is really an amazing event. I mentioned that they conjunct every 20 years, right? So we have these big changes in humanity, but they haven't been at 0 degrees molding and meshing together into one planet since 1623, and that really is a huge event because it's not just something that we're going to feel. The disruption has been major and is going to be major, and we'll be able to see it visually kind of guiding us in a certain direction, both metaphorically and literally. I mean, we've got certain things to focus on now. We're going to move towards those, and on a literal sense, it's actually a light in the sky saying go this way. So it gives you that sense of, okay, there is a door opening, I can move ahead with this. So earlier in 2020, the structures were already being tested because we had a stellium, which is a word that we use in astrology. I sound like such an expert. It's spelled, people always ask me this is why I want to explain the word and spell it. It's S for sugar, T for Timothy, E for echo, L for Lima, another L for Lima, I for Indonesia, U for Uranus, and M for mother, stellium. And what that means is that 3 planets sit together. So they all conjoin each other and they all mold their energies into one. And we had Pluto, the planet of transformation and change and real upheaval, death and rebirth, major transformation, Jupiter, and Saturn, the two involved in this great conjunction. We had all 3 sitting together at the beginning of 2020 in January. And they were all sitting in Capricorn, the sign of the worker, the sign that's ruled by Saturn, and it's really concerned with structure. And often when it comes to the human body, it's the bones of our bodies. It's the things that keep us upright and are responsible for our posture. It's kind of the structure of a building. It's what keeps the roof on and it prevents the walls from falling down. It's really important to look at structures sometimes and to say, hey, this is actually going to hold up. This is valid. This is something we can rely on. If we couldn't, then we'd always expect the roof to fall in over our heads. So structure really is important. So we had that happening from January until March in 2020, and that's tested the structure of the human body and the way the human body is in society and what we have to think about consciously as a result of the changes we've experienced this year. So that's been in Capricorn, and the year has really been evidence of that being tested, and we can see that happening. Now it's not so much about how we're going to be affected, how we're going to cope with this. It's much more with this shifting into Aquarius. How can we learn from this? How can we educate other people? How can we take this, what we've learned about this specific issue, and how can we apply it to other things and become smarter and more aware and self-aware as a society as the human species, and what does it teach us about the human spirit as well? Because a lot of people have suffered greatly this year, and a lot of people have learned how resilient they are. That when things have been, the rug has been pulled out from under them, that they can still function, that they can still pick themselves up, even though it seems like hope has been lost, and to continue on. So Jupiter and Saturn meet every 20 years, but this time we have Pluto in the mix. It's going to stay in Capricorn until 2024, so it's not part of this great conjunction, but we have it in the mix, we have it nearby. And the last time Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter were together in Capricorn like this was in 1285. So that's 800 years ago. So it makes sense that we had a major disruption happening that really tested everything, because Pluto is all about, let's clean the slate. Let's totally blow everything to smithereens and start over and really learn anew. And obviously that's really unpleasant. And we don't want our structures blown up because we've spent a lot of time building them. But sometimes you really need to start all over again to have the sense that, wow, I can actually breathe, I can do something here, and I'm going to move on with my life. So like I said, Pluto is going to stay in Capricorn until 2024. So that's going to continue to look at how can we transform the things that we hold dear in our world. How can we look at the human body? How can we make changes? How can we adapt our behavior in an attempt to heal and to become stronger as a species? So that's not quite over. That's going to be with us for another 4 years. Moving on to Aquarius in itself, the air sign, it is concerned with the intellect and communication and inspiration and ideas and the way you teach other people, and it's very much about being selfless. Gemini is also an air sign that's about communication and getting your point across and being creative, but Aquarius doesn't just think about one-to-one, my story, my interests, what I like, what I dislike. It's much more about how can I be up on stage and teach a group of people and do something for the greater good. It's really selfless. It's about sharing something that everyone is going to benefit from. And we do live on a planet where the law of attraction is in effect. And if you give something, you get it back. So Aquarius, if I reach lots of people, that has a much bigger impact. So you're going to get a lot more back. So it's important to think about your future in the sense of what you want to do and what you want to achieve. But it's also important to think about how your actions are going to affect others, and often you will inspire people just by living your best life and by saying, hey, there is hope, I need to do this, because other people will look at you and say, hey, if Susan can do this, then I can do it too. And then on a more literal level, looking at your experiences, seeing how you got through things, how you have learned and become an expert this year, and asking yourself, how can I teach other people that? And what I'm just getting intuitively is, what have I found to be unacceptable? What am I no longer going to tolerate? And why should I tell other people about that? Why they shouldn't tolerate it either? Because I want to make the world a better place. And that sounds really trite, but it isn't, because one person can change society. If you have a wonderful idea, you can affect millions of people. So you are that one special person. Don't think that, all the greats have come and gone and that you have no personal power. You have as much power as anybody. If you decide to invent the next thing that's going to affect loads of people, then that's something that happens during this age because you're present in it. If you decide to write a book which really opens everyone's eyes and shows them, for instance, how to connect to the universe in a way that's never been done before, then you're the mother and father of that whole movement. And what I have noticed is that a lot of personal power gets diluted these days because we've just got so much noise. If you look at social media, it's so difficult to identify greatness just because you've got thousands of tweets to get through or Instagram posts. And what I think that does on a subconscious level for people, it kind of dilutes their own sense of power, and it kind of says, quite literally, do you know what, I'm just one voice among millions. Who's going to care what I have to say? And that's something that you can only resolve by looking within and saying, do you know what, this is really worthwhile. This idea that I've got, this thing that I want to share, is really valuable. And I need to believe in it, because if I don't believe in it, other people aren't. I have to generate the energy within myself to put that out there, believing in it. And if it is genuinely valuable, other people are guaranteed to pick up on it. So it doesn't matter if there are millions of posts or 1,000 dissenting voices. If you've got something to offer that's worthwhile, people will see that, but they will pick up on it and they will hear you. So the age of personal agency is not over with. If anything, it's starting, because everyone has a voice, and it's really important to share your insights and the things that you have learned, because they do have the potential to change the fabric of life really, really quickly and on a global level. So Aquarius is concerned with innovation, the future, technology, and revolution. Remember that Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, the planet of eccentricity and the unexpected and the miraculous. So expect people during this great conjunction, but moving on into 2021, to have amazing new insights and new ideas. And again, I have felt that we don't have a lot of greatness in the world at the moment. I mean, I'm sure we do. We've got people like Elon Musk taking people into outer space, and we've got scientists and all sorts of people creating these amazing new technologies and thinking for themselves and making leaps forward in terms of research and technology. But where are the big names? You know, we don't have a Mozart, we don't have a I don't know, like a Gandhi, we don't have Madame Curie, we don't have all these people who are celebrated in our society. And the reason for that is because they're yet to come, and they're yet to come, and they will appear at the end of this year and moving into 2021. So really expect major changes to society. And like I said, we don't just learn from the specific things that have happened during 2020. People will take those ideas, learn from them, but then also expand on them and run with them and really create unique and original content which is going to change the fabric of our society. So in the 90s, we had the internet happening, right? I mean, I think it became really mainstream in 95. No one shopped online or even thought, oh, why should I go online and connect with people over a PC? And now most of the shopping that's being done is online. So things can happen so quickly in a 25-year period, and the way we live our lives can change completely. So be ready for that and embrace it. Be ready for new opportunities. And say things can get better. New ideas are worthwhile. We can invest in people. We can listen to new voices out there. And I don't know, I'm quite a curious person. I like to hear different people and new ideas. So it's going to be really interesting, because we're going to have a lot more content that we can engage with. And we're certainly not going to be bored here with this Christmas star coming in and lighting up people's brains and flooding their imaginations with these amazing new revolutionary insights, which are really going to be amazing. So again, another example we had of this kind of Uranus Aquarius energy was a lot of the social activism that we saw this year. So now I want to talk about the Age of Aquarius. Okay, so the Age of Aquarius is not to do with the Great Conjunction. I think a lot of people are confusing it because Jupiter and Saturn move into Aquarius. Okay, but Jupiter is a planet that only stays in each sign for a year, and it's going to be in Aquarius, I think, again until March, when it goes into Pisces. So it's not like Jupiter now stays in Aquarius for the foreseeable future. It's going to move on. And the reason I'm saying this isn't the Age of Aquarius, because you could argue that, hey, we've got Saturn and Jupiter sitting on top of each other, closer than they've ever been in 400 years. We've been talking about the Age of Aquarius since the 1930s. We had that amazing musical Hair in the 60s. I went to see that in Austria, by the way, in Linz. There was a traveling production of Hair, and I loved that. And they sing that song in it, you know, the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. and peace for all human beings and the brotherhood of man and all of that stuff. The reason I don't think this is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius basically is because no one knows exactly when it happens. So I want to give you a little bit of info about this. There's something called the precession of the equinoxes. Okay, I mentioned earlier that the Earth is on a tilt, like on an axis, and it keeps shifting very gradually and very slowly. And the precession of the equinoxes is the motion of the equinoxes along the ecliptic. So if you look at the equator of the Earth, the thing that runs around the fattest part of the Earth, and you extend it out into the sky, that's the ecliptic. It's kind of like an extended equator. And if you look at the 12 signs of the zodiac in astrology, they're all in the sky around the Earth, along the ecliptic. And if the Earth shifts and tilts, then we're not going to be looking at Pisces anymore, which we've been looking at, but it shifts enough and we start looking at a different zodiac sign when the Age of Aquarius comes along, obviously Aquarius. Now this is something that's a little bit vague, because the cycle of precession lasts for 25,800 years. There are 12 signs of the zodiac, so if you divide 25,800, roughly the shift through each sign is going to be every 2,150 years. The thing about this is that it's a rough estimate, and also we don't exactly know when the age of Pisces started, so we're not going to know exactly when the age of Aquarius starts. Also, it's the shift between these signs of the equinoxes happens in March, at the March equinox point, and it doesn't happen during the winter solstice, and the 21st of December here is the winter solstice. So just from a technical perspective, the shift is going to be during a March equinox, so this can't be it. There was a Belgian astrologer a long time ago, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name, but it's Jean Mayes, and he kind of looked at this and he said that the age of Pisces started somewhere around 68 BC. If we divide the 25,000 by 12, we've got roughly 2,150 years. So just with that, it's not quite the right time yet, because we still got a few years to go. But he also said that the precession of the equinoxes is going to hit during this March equinox, and that's going to happen in 2597. So in about, what, 600 years from now? Some people have said that the Age of Aquarius started in 1929/1930. Other people, like this Belgian astronomer, he says that it's going to happen in 2597. So we can't be exact about it, and why I'm leaning towards the side of this isn't the Age of Aquarius, despite social media, despite the internet, despite this kind of brotherhood of man being really evident in the world, is because we don't know exactly when it happened. It's not a March equinox point, and also Jupiter is only going to stay in Aquarius for a number of months. It's not going to remain in Aquarius. And then you could say the Age of Aquarius starts anytime any planet goes into Aquarius. I mean, oh, Venus is going into Aquarius, this must be the Age of Aquarius. Pluto is going into Aquarius, it's the Age of Aquarius. No, I don't think so. It just happens that this is a huge great conjunction happening in Age of Aquarius, and I think the confusion is just that we've been waiting for this so long that we're looking for really key events like this and saying, oh, okay, well, that's it. I don't think it is. So we've got the vernal equinox. That's 2 moments in the year where the sun is exactly above the equator and day and night are of equal length. So we've got this happening in March and September. Oh yes, and I'm talking about this because he mentioned that the precession of the equinoxes and the change in the ages only happens during these vernal equinoxes, not the winter solstice and the summer solstice. So it's just according to this astronomer, the wrong time of year. Ultimately, this is going to be something that does happen when a March equinox point hits, and it's going to move into the constellation of Aquarius, but ultimately we're not 100% sure of when that is going to happen, but it certainly isn't on the 21st of December. So yeah, we've got a lot of energy saying that, you know what, things are shifting. The age of Pisces was associated with belief. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. It's a water sign. If you look at the glyph of Pisces, it's two fish kind of looking at each other. And I always associate Pisces with the veil that kind of separates this world and the spiritual world. And Pisces is about, think of the time of year. Pisces is like in March. It's when everything is still really dark. In the northern hemisphere, it's really cold. People are staying inside, and they're forced to share things with their families, and they're forced to kind of think about other people and to be considerate and to look at the food storage in the pantry and to say, do you know what, we've got enough for 4 weeks, so I can't go on a giant binge because the kids will starve. It's about music and love and being selfless, entertaining other people. And back in the day when we didn't have all of these things that entertained us and that made our lives more convenient, there was often a kind of moment of quiet and peace where you did have the time to contemplate the meaning of life and to connect with something bigger and to say, do you know what, I'm stuck in this cabin in the snow with my 8 children, they've gone to bed, what is it all about? Pisces is ruled by Neptune, the water planet of dreams and intuition. So it's really a time that makes things a little bit difficult to discern. Am I right? Am I not right? Is there some sort of higher power? Is there some meaning to this life, or isn't there? And those kind of answers are really difficult those kind of questions are really difficult to answer. It's like in a relationship, if you have an argument, sometimes it's really unclear. Was I being rude and selfish, or was the other person being inconsiderate or unfeeling? No one's going to give you the answer. It's a very personal experience, and only you can go one way or the other. And the age of Pisces was really about personal identification with what's going on. Like, I mean, we had Jesus come along, and we had the Buddha. He was before Jesus, so it's all during this time, as far as I'm concerned. And it's trying to figure out what this all is without having science or with having, you know, the explanation of, like, I mean, 2,000 years ago, they didn't know that water evaporated and then gathered in a cloud and started raining, and that a rainbow was just the diffusion of light into lots of different bits. They would have seen that as a sign from God. And the age of Pisces then kind of ticked along, and we had belief, and we had people engaged in religious war, which, I mean, we still do, people still believe. But I think a lot of that certainty has been eroded because we have other options now. You know, we have belief, and then some people are complete atheists, and some people are completely focused on science, and that there's nothing really to cherish and to believe, because ultimately one day we're going to be able to explain everything, and it's all going to make sense, and there is no higher power, whatever. And there was a lot of repression. So you have to take this on faith. So we had the Dark Ages. I'm not a historian, so excuse me if I'm getting these things wrong. But, you know, we had the Dark Ages in Europe, where the church was in power. And it was just like, do you know what? If you want to have an afterlife, if you want to get into heaven, you have to follow the rules. You have to believe what we're telling you. We are in power. You're the little person. You have to believe. There is no Google, so you can't check if we're right or not. You just have to take it at face value. And if you don't behave, you're going downstairs, and if you do behave, you're going upstairs for an afterlife. And no one really, well, a lot of people did question it, but I think the general public was focused on this power which kind of oversaw everything, and just took it on belief that there's a rhyme and reason for your existence, and that you have to accept certain things. A lot of the illnesses that we've got today, which are curable, you know, back in the day, they would have said, oh, well, you've gone blind, that is the will of God. Whereas these days, they'll say, well, those are cataracts that come that have come along because you're 90 years old, and we can just remove those and you can see again. So you can see how things are changing and are going to continue to change over the next few hundred years. And I think personally we're going to come more together, and I don't think we're doomed. I read somewhere recently that, you know, the whole global warming thing is we reached the tipping point, the point of no return, in the 60s. And if we wanted to cool down global warming and stop the icebergs melting, it's not enough to just go solar and to have electric cars. We're going to have to suck the CO2 out of the atmosphere, because it started a vicious cycle and it's just going to heat up and up and up. And I don't think that means we have to abandon the planet and then we're doomed as a society. If anything, it is going to bring us together. Unfortunately, human beings come together when there's a common foe and when there's a common enemy. You can see that with a few friends of yours. If you're in a group of friends and you all despise each other, obviously I'm exaggerating, if you have problems with everybody, if one person really acts out, then it brings everyone else together because they've got a common enemy. And that's, I think, what's going to happen. So in 50 years or in the next 100 years, we'll be able to figure out how to get the CO2 out of the atmosphere, how to restore planet Earth, how to live in a way, a new political system. There will be a revolution. You know, democracy is just one system of governing society. And they've always... I don't want to sound like I'm preaching and going on and on about things I'm not an expert at, but there will be other systems of governing the people. I believe, and I choose to believe, that it will develop in a way that's positive. We will have certain obstacles, and bigger obstacles now as a society, as the human family. Because, for instance, things like global warming affect all of us. So there will be brilliant people who say, okay, this is a way to detox the atmosphere, and we'll be able to cool the planet. And those kind of successes are going to bring people together. Other great ideas will stem from those kind of innovations. And ultimately, and hopefully, we'll find a way of existing on this planet where we're not constantly beating each other over the head with sticks, and we're self-interested, and where it's just all about money and being in power and having, and it's just going to be the, you know, the idealized notion of this brotherhood of man, where we are here, we do love each other and ourselves, and we're able to live our best lives possible, but there's some equality involved. And there's no more partitioning, you know, like, oh, you're from there, so we don't like you, we're going to stick with our own group. It's ridiculous how some people split people into groups. I remember 10 years ago, I met this guy, and we were in like this in this institutional setting. And the first thing, it was in Manchester, in the Manchester area in England. And Manchester is quite a spread out city. Lots of suburbs and different socio-economic suburbs and neighborhoods and stuff. And the way he decided who he was going to be friends with and not was by asking them what part of Manchester they were from. And he only decided to speak to the people who were from nice parts of Manchester. I mean, what is that? You're ruling out people, human beings who may have brilliant ideas, just because you've got some preconceived notion about who fits and who doesn't. And that's what I'm hoping for, that ultimately this Age of Aquarius is going to free people from that kind of limited thinking, and we're all going to come together and we'll embrace difference and diversity, because that's where new ideas come from. If we're all homogenized in some sort of ideal society, we'll all be thinking along the same lines, and people aren't going to come up with earth-shattering, life-changing ideas. So that's what this is all about. I hope that gives you something to go on. I'm sorry to go on and on and on about my own ideas, but I don't think this is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius. I think we're shifting from Pisces into Aquarius, and I think, if anything, we're at the very, very, very beginning of it, where things like the internet are just like a drop in the ocean of what's going to happen and how cohesive we're going to become. I mean, it could be that we find some sort of technology that we can plug into our brains that enables us to read other people's minds. That certainly would be cohesive and would make us feel connected. So I really think there are phenomenal unbelievable things that are yet to come. And I personally think, I mean, not to narrow it down too much, but I think they're going to happen over the next 500 years. And the trend is towards understanding and teaching and coming together, rather than taking things on blind faith and just believing and being oppressed and keeping your head down and just getting on with your little patch of the world. But it's just much more outward looking and enlightened and informed. So I just want to look at the actual chart of what happens on the 21st of December 2020. You can see at the top there, we've got the symbol for Jupiter and Saturn. Both of them sitting in Aquarius at 0 degrees. So that is this amazing Christmas star that we've got, creating these rumblings of change. But you'll notice that next to it, we've got Pallas Athena. I include Pallas Athena in my charts. And by the way, if you've never had your birth chart done, your natal chart, this is what it looks like. I put in your date of birth, your time of birth, and your place of birth, and then I get a snapshot of the sky at the moment you were born. This is simply a snapshot of the sky at the moment this great conjunction happened. And by analyzing it, I can see different areas in your life that are heightened and supported, and areas you may want to work on, and what it says about you. Astrology, by the way, is not like this stamp on your forehead that says this is your destiny and you're going to have to live it out. It gives you an insight into your personal makeup and kind of the fundamental building blocks of who you are. And then this is Western astrology, and in the West we like to believe, and I think it's right, that we can manifest our reality and we can change ourselves and we can create whatever life we want. And again, if you want to free yourself from things that hold you back, but I'm a Virgo, so take that in mind, I feel that you have to understand those things first. That's why I've gone to therapy for so many years. So by understanding those things, and that in my experience doesn't give you the power to change them, but by understanding them, you at least know that there's something going on that needs to change if you want to free yourself. And again, going through my life, I've noticed that if you then appeal to something bigger or something good inside of you, something that kind of contains your human spirit, and you say, I know these things about me, help me overcome them so I can live this amazing life, then that's when the connection between you, your body, and your higher self, that really clicks and the power kicks in, and that's when you can change things. So you don't have to be religious, you don't even have to be spiritual, you just have to understand or be willing to acknowledge that there's some sort of bigger energy at work in this universe, and that you don't have all the answers. And I think that's it. When I was looking for God as such when I first got into recovery, and I really wasn't interested in spirituality whatsoever. I'm a sun sign Virgo, my rising is Taurus, and my moon is Capricorn. So my focus is on what I can touch and feel and see and influence. Spirituality, I was like, why would I connect or try to connect with something that's so hard to get hold of? If you want to call me, just call me. If you existed, you would have said something by now. But no. I went on this journey, and I tried to find something bigger. And what helped me is that someone said, you know what, the concept of something bigger than you, just go stand on the beach and put your feet in the ocean and look out to sea. Is that ocean bigger than you? Is it mysterious and full of wonder and could contain things that you have no idea about? Yes, absolutely. So then is it such a stretch to think that there could be something bigger and miraculous out there that kind of, whether it intervenes or not, which is a big point, whether it intervenes or not, could there possibly be something bigger out there that you don't quite understand? Absolutely. The universe expands and contracts and stuff. Why does it do that? We don't know. So anyway, we've got Pallas Athena at 4 degrees in Aquarius, and yeah, this is what I was saying. I add certain parts in the chart which other astrologers don't. So I add Pallas Athena, and I put in the south node of the moon, and I put in Ceres, the abundance planet, cornucopia of wealth. Chiron, I use the asteroid that represents the ego. Black Moon Lilith, I put in there. I also use the Arabic part, the part of fortune, to see where you're luckiest and where things happen most easily. So those are things I add into this astrology chart. If there are certain heavenly bodies here that you're thinking, what's this? I've added those in deliberately. So Pallas Athena the warrior goddess, 4 degrees in Aquarius, she really urges you to connect with that sense of learning and self and certainty. Just because you've experienced something and you've learned from your own experience and your connection on this planet does not make your knowledge any less valuable than Galileo or Pythagoras, people who came up with ideas. They have been celebrated by society, they're being taught in schools. Just because they've got that history behind them doesn't make those ideas any more valuable or more right than the ideas you're coming up with now. And it takes me back to that thing about where all the great people, all the innovators. Pallas Athena at 4 degrees in Aquarius gives you that inner certainty and that confidence that you do have something valuable to add, and it's essential that you share it with humanity because they're going to learn from it. So that's 4 degrees away from the Great Conjunction. So not only does this give you hope and urges you to think on a large scale, it also gives you a personal sense of certainty and a commitment to your ideas, so you don't just brush them aside and say, whatever, someone else will think of this too. It always comes in twos, by the way. Things always come in twos. If you have an Edison in, inventing the light bulb, then you've got another guy at the same time working on the same concept. If to make it, a little bit less highbrow, if you've got a Britney Spears, you're going to get a Christina Aguilera. You always have two of them. So you will have ideas, and if you just brush them aside and say someone else will take care of it, they will, and they'll take the credit. And then you'll look in the paper and say, hey, my idea is being published, why didn't I follow through on this? Don't let that happen. Pluto is nearby, 7 degrees away, but it's in Capricorn, so it's a different sign. And like I said, it's going to stay there until 2024. It's at 23 degrees in Capricorn, and that means that the explosions and the changes to the structures of our lives and our society, they're not meant to just torture you and make things more difficult. They're meant to give you some freedom. It's like you have all these buildings that you think are so great, but then you have all the buildings that you create, and sooner or later you think, oh, we had all this amazing sunlight before, and now I've got these 5 huge high-rises that I've put here, and there's no more sunlight. So you're only going to get that back by bringing one of them down, so you can have a little gap in between all those buildings, so you can restore what's natural. And that's what Pluto is doing. It's getting rid of some things which are really permanent long-term, and removing them so there can be freedom. Like with the example with nature, because all the tourists aren't traipsing through the rainforest, some of it will have recovered. So expect certain things to continue to change, and don't expect everything to be pleasant. Once 2021 hits, there will still be challenges, there will still be things that are pulled out from under you. And again, don't be so quick to label those things as good and bad. The example of the high-rises, you may think it's really good that you're building them, but then when you realize there's no more sunlight, it's like, oh, I'm a victim of my own success here. I'm going to have to tear one of them down to restore the sunlight. So when anything happens, try and keep an objective and open point of view and say, I'm just going to go through this and see where it leads me, rather than saying this is bad, this is good, and jumping on top of things. Then we've got the Great Conjunction forming certain relationships with other things in the sky. First of all, we have a semi-square, and I'm just looking at this carefully. A semi-square between Saturn and Jupiter, semi-square, 45 degrees away from Ceres at 8 degrees in Pisces. So the spiritual side of things is really, really strong, and it's your experience that educates you. Remember, you're the expert. And with Ceres at 8 degrees, a power strength, in Pisces opens up the heavens, the spiritual, and thins the veil for you. You're going to get a lot of ideas from your higher self, and that's where all ideas really stem from. And you have an open channel to that source of all ideas, and it's not just your experience, it's also your connection with something bigger that will make you the expert in your field. Then we have a sextile, a harmonious relationship between the Great Conjunction and Chiron at 4 degrees in Aries. So it's important that you don't just think about yourself and how you can create structure in your life and how you can put down roots and get everything boxed off so that you're safe and you're sitting in your mansion by yourself and you've got your butler feeding you your meals and everything's secure and safe. It's not about nailing things down to keep them safe. It's about being willing to open up to change and saying it's not just about me. Yeah, I have a path to walk. I'm going to walk that, do the best I can, take other people along for the ride. And I'm not trying to maintain the status quo. I'm trying to build on what already is, and I'm trying to improve. If you take this approach that your money, your security, your opinion, your exclusive, special, unique, no one else knows anything but you, and you're only self-interested, that's really not going to serve you in 2021. So the narcissists are going to have a hard time in 2021 because that kind of isn't supported anymore. It's really about coming together, and when someone is just blatantly rude or heartless or self-interested, the general public or people in general are going to wake up to that and say, we're not going to tolerate that anymore. Or someone who's, you know, blatantly racist or blatantly hurtful to others. Other people are now, for more and more, going to stand up to that and say, this is actually, oh, I'm going to use a big word here, watch it come out. This is pernicious to our society. This is hurtful to certain people, so stop doing it. So that's interesting because that's really conducive to teaching and things becoming more cohesive. Then we have a square with the Great Conjunction and Black Moon Lilith and Uranus. Black Moon Lilith is the part of the chart where the ego says, don't do this, it's not going to work. It's at 6 degrees in Taurus. So it says, your ideas, everyone has those. Ignore them. Move on. Don't think you're so clever. Reading between the lines, it means that you do have something valuable going. And Uranus is eccentricity and rebellion, remember, and it rules Aquarius. So Uranus is really important, and it's being sabotaged by Black Moon Lilith sitting right on top of it at the same degree. When you think for yourself, and you forget everything everyone has ever told you, and you stop putting people on pedestals and idolizing them, and you say, actually, what do I think? That's when you're able to translate your ideas. You will have opportunities to translate your ideas into something tangible, physical, that other people can access, whether that's your words, or you write, or you have a little blog, or whatever. It will give you the opportunity to express your own opinions. So again, expect more voices to be heard in 2021 and more valuable content to emerge from all those voices. Don't let that put you off, that there are lots of people on the planet who have lots of ideas. I know I'm repeating myself, but when you have something really brilliant to share, people will find that. Even if it's the tiniest little LinkedIn post ever, people will find it. We have a sesqui square between the Great Conjunction and the North Node at 19 degrees in Gemini. And that means that there are much more opportunities for people to find a way forward. So it's personal hope, but it's also hope because you now believe in yourself and you feel that you're here for a reason. You need to stay alive, to share your experience, to be creative, to find a way to overcome obstacles and to move forward with your life. And it really gives everyone here on planet Earth a renewed sense of hope and belief that things can change and that they can get better. I mean, that may sound very weak and kind of like a bit of a placebo, but it isn't. Like, imagine you were living during Stalin's regime, which lasted forever. You would have thought, you know what, things are never going to get better. There's never any hope. And despite that, there were brilliant people who had ideas, who refused to accept that regime, who left, who spoke out against it, who innovated. And then ultimately, I mean, this may be a little bit dark, but eventually Stalin dies. And all of us are going to die. And there's a quote that's kind of nagging me a little bit. I can't remember who it is. Someone please attribute this quote. As long as there's death, there's freedom. And that puts death in a whole different perspective, because one person's point of view isn't going to last for eternity. We're not immortals. So if someone's oppressive and has oppressive ideas, sooner or later that person's going to die and is going to be replaced by someone with new ideas. So if you look at it that way, death isn't this terrible thing, but it's something that can free an entire nation of oppressed people. And this is going to make room for new voices to emerge. We have an opposition between Pluto and the part of fortune, but it's Pluto, not the great conjunction, and that's what I'm looking at first. And we have a semi-square between the south node in Sag and the great conjunction. Oh, so I mentioned this in the video on the solar eclipse on the 14th, but this desire to flee and to not face your problems, that's being released, and you're able to really say, it doesn't matter if I have problems or not, I'll be able to overcome them. And even if I don't have the power to overcome them, I'll be able to find a way around them, or I'll be able to find a way to exist and to do something valuable for me and for others, even with my problems. It's not the be-all and end-all. Life doesn't have to be perfect. I don't need to panic, and I don't need to escape from anything. I can face what my life brings me, and I can thrive despite my circumstances, whether they're fabulous or not. So yeah. Okay, then we have, let's see, major aspect patterns. We've got a T-square between Pluto and the part of fortune and the rising in Aries. That's that big red triangle. So Pluto, transformation and challenge to the human body and society. Part of fortune at 18 degrees in Cancer. The solution is to not stick your head in the sand, but to care. And then with the rising in Aries at 23 degrees, realizing that you have the power to make major changes and to affect change, not just in your life, but for everybody. You are much more powerful than you realize. You have infinite power, and it's just finding a format to channel that power into. Einstein was an insurance salesman for years, and he sucked. He was a terrible insurance salesman. And then he had this miraculous year where he had these 4 amazing ideas, E equals mc squared being one of them, that really transformed the planet. If he'd stayed as an insurance salesman, he would have never been able to channel that miraculous energy into selling life insurance. You have to find a different format. So sometimes you see it can be brutal, and it feels like, oh, I've been plodding along and I've never found my purpose, and it's just eluding me, and I've just gone from one difficulty to another to another. It's through all of that muck and all of that dirt that eventually you stumble onto your path. Some people are blessed and they know their path as soon as they exist, and they do it, but then they have other obstacles. Someone leaves them and it crushes them for years and it delays their journey. We all have our own little thing, and whether you feel hard done by or not, it doesn't take away from the fact that you have this divine power in you, and it's your choice whether you choose to try and find it or not. Some people are happy to accept their life and they're quite content, and other people aren't. And no one can tell you what's right for you and what isn't right for you. But on this day, if you feel like you're not meeting your potential, or if you're not meeting your own expectations, then this is going to reinvigorate you, and it's going to say you can do this, keep looking, start again. Square 1 isn't so bad, and if you're at square 0, great, let's go. It doesn't matter where you are, you've got everything you need to be able to do what you want to do. So that causes friction, and that is something that works on this day independently of the Great Conjunction, so there's even more energy and drive. So we've got the Great Conjunction in itself giving you this ability to, innovate and to have ideas and to look to the future and all of that. But the other planets are kind of conspiring and giving you even more energy that says, on top of the Great Conjunction, we're going to fill you with fire and drive so that you can feel kind of pushed to come out with these things, to innovate. So that kind of says, reading between the lines, that no one likes to be up on stage, really nervous, not knowing what they're going to say. But sometimes it's important to put yourself in that kind of situation so that you do step out of your comfort zone and that you achieve greatness. And sometimes that requires a little bit of a push. So don't worry if you don't feel like you have it in you to push yourself. The stars are going to push you. The astrology will push you. Okay, sorry. What else? I think that is it. Yeah, that is it. that's what I get for the Great Conjunction. I hope this video gives you some ideas of what this means and what we'll be working with. If you would like a personal reading, if you would like me to look at your birth charts and see what that's about, or if you'd like a personal reading where I look at your birth chart and I put your progress chart around it and your transits to see how these events affect your chart in particular, then please get in touch with me via my website. It's gregoryscott.com. On the front page, click on book your readings to book your reading, to order your reading with me. And the reason that's interesting, your natal chart is the sky when you were born, right? But I've looked at the transits, how they're moving around and how they connect with one another. But what you'll have noticed is that I don't talk about the houses. In the astrology, the planet is the energy itself. The sign it's in is how that energy is channeled, and the house is what area of your life it's channeled into. And this is for everybody, so I don't look at the houses because we all have lots of different areas in our lives. But if I put the transits around your birth chart and I see that the Great Conjunction is in your first house of self, then you're going to be someone who is really going to experience this on a very personal level, and it's like, oh, I have hope about me. If this happens in your second house of money, then it's really likely that this Great Conjunction is going to have a major influence on your financial circumstances. If it's in your third house of communication, then it's about how you connect with people, or maybe even you're going to download specific content which is going to be in the public sphere. And on and on and on with each house, fourth house family, fifth house romance. So if you want me to have a look at that, and it's an interesting season because we've had the eclipses, the first one on the 30th of November, then on the 14th of December. Now we've got this on the 21st of December. So we've got lots and lots and lots going on. So if you would like to check in with me, you know where I am, just get in touch anytime. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up. Hit subscribe to share. I'm running out of words. If you, if you want to be part of this great little community we've got here on YouTube, then click subscribe to join the channel. And if you like the video a lot, then share it online, please, so other people can find it. That would be really helpful. That's the way new people find me here on YouTube, so that would be awesome. Have a wonderful time here during this Great Conjunction, and I'll speak to you soon. All the best. Mwah.